For today's meeting, let me introduce the speaker. Well, Dr. Praveen Bhatia does not need any introduction. He has been a frequent visitor to Meerut, but still, he is MS and FRCS. He's a robotic, bariatric, and laparoscopic surgeon at Sir Gangaram Hospital and Bhatia Global Hospital and Endosurgery Institute, New Delhi. He's an eminent speaker at the national and international level with many great orations to his name. Now I request Dr. Praveen Bhatia, sir, to start today's deliberations. Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Medhavi and Dr. Singhal. After so many years, I am seeing, and Dr. Shanti Sarup, thank you very much. Today, as Dr. Medhavi Tomar requested me day for yesterday, that why not have a small session or meeting on starting or restarting surgery after COVID-2, COVID tsunami. So my thought process was that I could have presented with my slides on for hours and hours, but no, I just wanted that we should have a learning for all of us, so that ultimately all the surgeons, they are also interacting and then presenting. Now, in the last COVID, that means when we started with having the corona infection in November 2019, and after that, once the infection was there and once the lockdown was there, yes, Royal College of Surgeons of England, the American College of Surgeons, then SAGES guidelines, and so ICMR guidelines, AIMS guidelines, so many guidelines have been there about the restarting of the surgery after COVID era. All of us have learned that. But in this phase, second phase or second wave of COVID, so many challenges were there. And frankly speaking, I have forwarded all the guidelines. I did not make the slides of that, but I have forwarded to Dr. Medhavi Tomar, and he can always distribute all those guidelines of Royal College of Surgeons and ACS and SAGES, so that ultimately we can learn from them and we can do our practice in the manner in which we have to face. As we were discussing with Dr. Vishal also in the beginning, that there are two kinds of practices. One is in the government medical colleges and another is a private institution, the private practice of the medical. So I would just dwell on these issues, that whenever we are going in for surgery, the elective surgery, we have to make it a point that we should get the RT-PCR done beforehand. And for that, my request to you all is that, yes, there are guidelines and there are some orders from the government of India and Delhi government or UP government that yes, you can admit the patient without getting the test done. No, our thinking is loud and clear. It is our moral responsibility. It is your moral responsibility that one, we should not get infected. One, and second thing is that our staff should also not get infected in this corona time. I am not here to frighten you, but I know, and all of us know, that there have been great surgeons. For example, Dr. Dr. Shekhar Agarwal, Dr. KK Agarwal, and so many people have, so many surgeons, so many anesthetists have lost their life in this struggle. So please take extra care. I would put it this way, that there is safety in more safety. So first, the most important is, and many times, many surgeons, especially when we come across, when we talk to each other, they always say, no, sir, I have got the vaccines done and both the shots have been there and now I am absolutely safe. I would say, no, please come out of this thought that you are safe even after 2 vaccines, because the thinking is that many of us start becoming complacent after getting the vaccines. I think there is no role of complacency. One has to take all the precautions, and the precautions, we know that precautions are, first, that SMS, that is social distance of 2 gaz ki duri, and then 2 masks. I would request all my young colleagues also, especially the senior ones as well as the young colleagues, please make sure that in all the operation theaters, in all the patient encounters, treat any and every person as positive until proved otherwise. Please do not think that he's a family friend, he's a relative, he is so he or she is so and so. No, we should always think, especially we have learned in last 1.5 years, that treat any and everyone as positive until proved otherwise, and take all the precautions. Plus, as I mentioned, social distance of 2 meters, and then 2 masks are important. I think this has not been preached in so many forums, that ultimately as surgeons we all have to have the N95 mask as well as the surgical mask, because the thinking is that if we are putting in the N95 mask, there are the format of everyone's face is different, so there will be some crevices through which the virus can enter. But if we are donning both the N95 mask and the surgical mask and nicely tied, then the chances are that the crevices will be blocked, and then the virus will not be able to enter us, or we will, if we, for example, if we are spreader of the infection, then we will also not be giving to the patient. So I think this is very, very important, that we have to maintain social distance, we have to maintain 2 masks, and we are in surgery, all of us are in habit of washing our hands on and off, on and off. But in this era of 1.5 years, all of us have learned that this has to increase like anything. I would not see even a single patient without washing my hands and without donning the gloves also. We always wear the gloves, and we always make sure that even in OPD, even in outpatient clinics, whether in Gangaram Hospital or in Bhatia Global Hospital, every patient has to be seen with 2 masks, face screen, social distance, hand washing, and with the gloves on. And then only I am not, again and again, I am not frightening you, but I am saying again and again, we may be left without getting the RT-PCR positive. So our thinking is, let us all work in one direction, that we should not be becoming the super spreader of infection. One, and then it is our moral responsibility that all our staff, the operation theater staff, the hospital OPD staff, and everyone is also vaccinated, so that ultimately we are not spreaders, we are not giving the infection to one and all. One. Second thing is that we should always make sure that even if, for example, I know of so many situations, so many operation theaters, even in Gangaram Hospital or elsewhere, that one of the OT technician got infected, and then the whole of the OT staff has become infected. So please take care, extra care, that if somebody is having fever or some symptoms, please exclude them, give them quarantine, so that it is not spreading. We as surgeons, slightly we become over, I would say, bored, and then we start thinking, no, infection will not occur to me, it will occur to others. No, the anesthetists also, the surgeons also, we have to be very, very practical. Corona does not know that we are surgeons or the anesthetists or the physicians or anything. So please take extra care. As Dr. Medhavi Tomar was also mentioning, that in this era of COVID era, I call this as COVID era, all of us have learned that we should take care of our oxygen first. That means we should take care that we do not have any comorbidities associated. For example, if we are having the belly, abdominal belly is pouting out, or if the weight was more, or if we are having some comorbidities like diabetes, hypertension, and so on and so forth. So we should take care of our health first. We should try our best. Jaan hai to jahan hai, sar jaye par sair na jaye, in the sense that we should make sure that harkat mein barkat hai. We would love that we should shed our weight first, and then we will love that our people, our patients are also taken care of. So one is take care of your health first, take care of your staff health first, and then now we will come to the point of taking care of the patients. So when we take care of the patients, please make sure that we are examining them thoroughly. We are not leaving any stone unturned. And then once the patient's RT-PCR has to be done within 48 hours. The guidelines, the ACS guidelines, American College of Surgeons guidelines, they say 24 hours. For example, the RT-PCR has to be proven to be negative, and then only one can admit the patient for elective surgery. But in our kind of environment, I would say we are not going in with ACS, AGS, RCS, or Royal College of Surgeons guidelines. Why? Because the area of practice of all the surgeons is different. The private hospitals, the private nursing homes, the government hospital, so the scenario will be different. So we should make sure that what we do practically is that we get the RT-PCR done within 48 hours of the test, of the admission. Once the RT-PCR is negative, then only we admit the patient, and next very day we operate the patient. Then is there any role of getting the CT scan? I would say that if the patient is asymptomatic and he or she is not having any fever, or he or she is not having any sore throat, there is no role of getting the HRCT in a pre-operative period. No, the guidelines also do not recommend it. But if, for example, if the patient is symptomatic, if the patient is presenting in emergency with fever, with pain abdomen, with loose motions, and so on and so forth, yes, definitely, even if, for example, if it is RT-PCR negative, then also one can go in for getting the HRCT. And there are changes, and all of us have seen that X-ray may not reveal the changes, but HRCT may reveal so many changes, and the score can be of the order of 8/25 to 16/25, and so on and so forth. So our thinking is that there is safety in more safety. There is safety in more safety. So we should guard ourselves. We should make sure that we are not leaving any stone unturned. And once the patient is admitted for the surgery, then the most important aspect is even the anesthetist should also take all the precautions while doing pre-anesthesia checkup, that we are taking care of all the comorbidities. Most of us, can you imagine that this is the data from, and it was published in Lancet also, that 74% of the deaths which had occurred in US, in Italy, and all over the world, they were having the obesity as the cause. In obese patients, it is very, very challenging to manage them in the ICU also, in ventilation also, in the proning also. So these patients had obesity. 18% had the hypertension, and 18% had diabetes. So what I mean to say is, please make sure that your anesthetist is also taught well, your physicians are also taught well, that once we are going to touch the patient, all these comorbidities are absolutely well controlled. That we should not, and I am sorry, I'm divulging this out. There have been instances in major hospitals like Medanta, like Gangaram, like Apollo, in Delhi also, that the surgeries were done, and as simple as, for example, laparoscopic cholecystectomies were done, or some other surgeries were done, and patient became positive after getting the surgery done, and then they had a cascade of events, and ultimately they died also. So our thinking is that please do not go under this thought that my patients will survive, my patients are not going to die. No, even if we are taking so many precautions, But if the patient gets infected in an infected environment of hospital, then also the complications, the patients, for example, in Delhi, in the first wave, I know even the post-cesarean patients, post-delivery patients, post-cesarean patients had died at that young age after getting the COVID positivity. So our thinking is that please take all the precautions that our patients, one, the RT-PCR, two, the comorbidities, and third, the hospital environment does not give the infection. Now, next step, we have taken the patient into the operation theater, and then what are the precautions one has to take? One most important is that let's tell our anesthetist that at the time of intubation, once he is intubating the patient, he should have only one or two of the staff members inside, and that too they should have the PPEs donned on them. There is no role of any complacency. If you start thinking that our staff does not need PPEs and our anesthetist does not need PPE, I am absolutely clear in my heart, no, we are doing it wrong. We are doing a wrong job. So our thinking is that at the time of intubation, it should be the anesthetist should also maintain a safe distance. One, though he or she cannot, but still he should have the PPE on, and then there should not be many members or even the surgeon. Initially, pre-COVID era, in many of the workshops, I have always made sure that surgeon is standing alongside the patient. But now, in this COVID era, we have realized that as less people in the operation theater as possible, and this is told by the American College of Surgeons guidelines also. So thinking is that we should make sure that not many observers, not many students, not many operation theater staff are in the operation theater at the time of intubation, and it should be as safe as possible. What about the role of screens? Initially in Bhatia Global Hospital, in Gangaram Hospital also, we had the glass panes or the screens made at the time of intubation so that there was a hole and the surgeon, the anesthetist could do it. But ultimately we realized it, no, it did not solve the purpose. It did not serve the purpose, and it was a futile kind of exercise. One. Then once the intubation has been done, then we should make sure that once we have taken the patient and we know that, for example, we are going to do the laparoscopic hernia repair or laparoscopic cholecystectomy, we should know that oxygen supply in our operation theaters is enough. In this last COVID, in this wave of COVID tsunami, I would put it this way, many of us have faced the situation in which the oxygen supply was not there, and then that was the reason that we did not do the elective surgery to start with. But once we have got the enough of oxygen supply at the back end, then only we should start doing the elective surgeries. Otherwise, this kind of oxygen crunch and oxygen crisis will cause deterioration of the health of the patients in ICU. So our thinking is that we should make sure that first have the preparedness in your mind, that if we are prepared that yes, oxygen is there, all the resources are fully there, then only go in for surgery. Then second thing is that once the patient is intubated, once the patient is positioned, and once the surgeon is going to go in for the laparoscopic surgery, then again, please make sure that the donning and doffing areas are absolutely clear. And we should make sure that all the gowns are disposable. They are not, we should not use the cloth gowns which we have been using before. So the gowns have to be the surgical gowns which are impervious to the fluids. The fluid should not go into our clothes, and that should definitely, the material of the PP of the kit, the surgeon's kit or the gowns should be such that the fluid is not going in, so that ultimately we are decreasing the exposure to the virus as much as possible. One. Second thing is that we should always make sure that we are having the face screen, we are having the double mask, and then once we start the surgery, then also please, especially in laparoscopic cholecystectomy, please make sure that there is a vent available for the aerosols. Means, for example, what we do is that if we go in from the Palmer's point, put in a Vere's needle, and then let the Vere's needle insufflation is there, pneumoperitoneum is there, but let that the Vere's needle remain there, even if we have put in the primary port, but that will be connected to the tubing, and that tubing will be going into the, either if you have got, for example, the monitor in which the gas absorbent, the aerosol absorbents is there, nothing like it. But even if, for example, if you do not have for the smoke evacuator device, then also one can go in for laparoscopic surgery by putting the other end of the tube into the hypochlorite solution. So if we are taking care of the aerosols, because in the first wave, in the second wave, all of us have learned that these aerosols, when we are using the, for example, electrocautery, either in open surgery, it is less exposure, but in laparoscopic surgery, for example, if the aerosols are coming and if you are evacuating the trocars and the whole of the gas is coming onto you, that can be challenging and that can lead to infection. So our thinking is, please make sure that the Vere's needle remains in the Palmer's point and it is connected to the tube, and other side of the tube is connected to the hypochlorite solution, so that aerosols are not getting into your system, into our system, into the system of our OT nurses and OT technicians also. And similarly, when we are using the, for example, in open surgery, and Dr. Singhal will remember, in open surgery also, if we are using the monopolar hook or monopolar cautery, then also we should make sure that we are having the suction also attached with the monopolar cautery. Means, for example, if there are fumes, and if their fumes are coming out, they may harbor some virus, and that can lead on to the spread of the virus. So make sure that the suction machine is also on, and so that the as less of contamination is there as possible. One. And then after we get the specimen also out, please make sure that we are taking adequate precautions, that suddenly the air, the aerosols, the gas, the carbon dioxide does not come on our face, and that can lead on to challenges later on. So the again and again thinking is that please take care of the aerosols as much as possible. And once the patient is done, and the extubation is being done, extubation time is also that kind of time in which, if, for example, the patient was still harboring the virus in the throat, that can be given to the anesthetist or that can be given to the operation theater staff, and that can lead to challenges. So make sure at the extubation time also, yes, the required number of staff should be in the theater, but not overcrowding of the theater people which should be there. No, because you have to maintain the social distance. We should always take the precautions. We should always take the universal precautions which are possible, so that ultimately we are minimizing the chances of anyone getting infected because of that. So many healthcare workers, so many doctors, so many anesthetists have lost their lives. I'm sorry to say, we should always remember them, but everyone says that I took all the precautions, but no, our thinking is there must have been some lapse somewhere. The best is not the best for everyone the same way. So one has to make sure that we dread this and we take care of these kind of infections. Then once the patient is being shifted out of the theater, also again make sure that the technicians, the ward boys, are also having the PP kits, and once they are transferring the patient, we should have a demarcation that this is the OT staff which is going to go up to that area of the OT gate, and then next, for example, if the patient is to be transferred to the ICU care, then the next set of people should come with a separate PP kits, so that the infection is not taking from ICU to the operation theater staff or vice versa. So there should be a separate kind of staff which is going out, and then ultimately the patient is taken care of. Then third aspect is that we as laparoscopic surgeons, all of us know, Medhavi also, and everyone of Dr. Rishi Bhatia, all of us know that this kind of laparoscopic surgery will have a minimum kind of stay. It becomes more or less a daycare kind of procedure. So please make sure that we are insisting at the time of surgery also that we leave the drain if it is very much required, but otherwise we are intending that the patient should go home as ambulatory as possible, as early as possible, so that we do not have any chance that we gift him the coronavirus, we gift him the infection. So our thinking is, especially when we are, as we were discussing with Dr. Vishal, especially once you are working in a government kind of setup, you will have to operate on COVID plus patients also, and you will have to operate on COVID negative patients also. So please make sure that we are not causing the transfer of the virus from COVID positive patient to the COVID negative patient. Once we are doing the COVID plus patients, again, the precautions have to be taken. Lot of such kind of precautions have to be taken. And then, as I mentioned, that please instruct your staff also, after your junior surgeons also, that they should leave the OT clothes behind. They should definitely have a scrub or the wash, or they should have a shower in the theater, just outside the theater, and then go in for our theater. So our thinking is that we should make sure that we are taking as many precautions as possible. Then only the chances of become a herd immunity to be reaching faster will be there. Please do not take the vaccine lightly. You should make sure that all the staff members are having 2 doses of vaccine, and then only we will be able to start. And I think we can always have the discussion on the smaller, finer points of which whatsoever I have may have missed, so that ultimately I am also learning and you are also learning. So I think I will finish off by saying, with folded hands, 2 गज दूरी, 2 मास्क, 2 वैक्सीन्स, और हाथ और सैनिटाइजर्स जितना ज्यादा यूज करेंगे उतना बेनिफिट. थैंक यू वेरी मच. गॉड ब्लेस यू ऑल. गॉड ब्लेस यू. ग्रेट हेल्थ. थैंक्स अ लॉट. Dr. Tomar.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the very detailed talk. Basic issue is we should not become complacent even with decreasing number of cases. One thing I would like to just bring your notice to is the OT construction and the OT hygiene. Well, if you are in a good institute and you have the HEPA filtrations and the positive pressure operation theaters and air exchanges, proper air exchanges, then also you can sort of dilute the infection if at all you have let it in. With those words, I would request Dr. Vishal Saxena to please conduct a question answer session. I don't think there are many questions in the chat box.
There is no question.
Just a sec, Vishal. Medhavi, for this, I would answer in this way. Yes, excellent that you have. I did not stress on this aspect of HEPA filters, but you should always make sure that once we are going to start the surgeries, so you should request the persons who have done the HEPA filtration in your theater that they should convert this into a negative filter system. So once the theaters are converted into negative filter systems, that means they are not throwing the air inside the operation theater, and then it is causing the spread of the aerosols. It should be negative suction which is being applied. That definitely helps. It's an excellent thought which you have raised. Yes.
Basically, the theater construction, you have a positive pressure inside, and whenever you open the doors, the pressure rushes out, and there are suctions at all the corners. So that is a sort of modular OT concept, which I'm talking about. Thank you for enlightening me about the negative pressure, negative filtration part. Anybody from the audience who wants to ask a question or make a comment, welcome.
There is one question from Dr. Rishi Bhatia, sir. After how many days patient can be operated after discharge from COVID ward?
Very good question, Dr. Rishi. Excellent question. The basic thoughts are that we should try our best not to operate for at least 8 weeks. At least the guideline says 8 weeks, 8 to 12 weeks. So we should make sure that the patient should not be a carrier. Though at that time, maybe after 14 days of the first initial infection, it is the dead virus which he is carrying. Even if he is RT-PCR negative, but it is still a good idea to wait for at least 8 weeks and then go in for surgery if the patient was positive. That was your question, that you should always wait for 8 weeks. And then in the same version, I would say that please do not have the overconfidence that once you have been infected, then next time you will not be infected. The chances are, and I know, and in all the WhatsApp university groups, all of us know that surgeons had one of my very colleague, very close colleague, he died recently, Dr. Rawat, A.K. Rawat. We were together in Maulana Azad Medical College. And can you imagine that he had the infection last year? And last year also he had COVID infection. He got himself vaccinated twice. And now this time again he has died. What I mean to say is that because of the exposure, because of the residual damage in the lungs, because of the disease, and even then, even if he was doubly vaccinated, still his lungs must not have been functioning the best way, and he has come to the COVID infection. So please think that even if one time infection has occurred, it can reoccur. So we should definitely play in that window, that approximately 8 weeks time is given, and then again, even if, for example, patient is coming for stent removal, double J stent removal or CVD stent removal, even then we get the RT-PCR done. We do not believe much on antigen test. Antigen test has a lot of negative specificity and sensitivity. So our thinking is that RT-PCR test has to be negative, then only we'll remove the stent. And that has to be within 24 hours. So next time, once the patient is coming for surgery after 8 weeks, then also get the RT-PCR done. And if the RT-PCR is negative, then go in for surgery.
Chalal.
Yes, sir. Dr. Singh.
Yes, anybody wants to make any comment or ask a question?
मेरे ख्याल से अपने माइक्स अनम्यूट करें, जिनको सॉरी म्यूट कर लें, जिनको क्वेश्चन पूछना है वो अपने माइक को ओपन कर ले, अदरवाइज बैकग्राउंड नॉइजेस आ रही हैं काफी ज्यादा जो है।
तुम्हें कोई दिक्कत हो तो ना चलाओ, नहीं चला लो, मुझे कोई दिक्कत।
Yeah, any other thought?
Yes, Dr. Ashu, you want to say something?
I want to ask whether P68 and A6800 mask is better and N95 is better.
Wonderful. Yes, definitely there are gradations. And if you can have the respirators, the masks which are having respirators, nothing like it. But you have to be tuned to wearing that kind of mask. And once you are operating especially on the COVID patients, COVID positive patients, the respirator is having a definite better edge as compared to N95. But if, for example, if a person like me or like Madhavi, if we are doing only laparoscopic kind of work and laparoscopic surgery, then N95 with another surgical mask is good enough.
Should we wear two N95 or one surgical mask in one N95?
I would put it this way, that recommendation, initially, all of us know that people used to say that for healthcare workers, it has to be N95 mask only. But in this last 1.5 years, all of us, because we are dealing with so much of uncertainty, I would put it this way. So a lot of work has been done on mask. So now the recommendation is that one should have the N95 mask first, and then it should be covered by the surgical mask. So that the basic logic is, and I am sold out about that logic, as I mentioned, that if we are, for example, having the N95 mask, there will be some crevices from which the aerosols can go in, some droplets can go in. And if we are having an excellent surgical mask also, so all these crevices will be taken care of, and then the chances of transmission or getting the virus in the aerosols is definitely reduced.
Sir, I would say there's also a counterpoint to this. The counterpoint is that since you are wearing a N95 mask, if it is properly fitting and you apply another mask over it, so what happens is that there is too much of resistance to the air getting filtered through that mask. So there is a higher chance of sucking in air from the sides. That is a counterpoint which I have read somewhere. So some people, it's still debatable. Some people say that one N95 is sufficient. Another people may say that you have to cover that N95 with a surgical mask. I am using a surgical mask over a N95, that's fine. But I feel that the proper seal of a N95 mask is more important than maybe wearing another mask over it. Plus, the issue is N95 is slightly costlier than the sort of surgical mask. So people usually tend to wear one N95 mask throughout the day. So you can just take off the surgical mask and discard it for any soiling and any contamination it has received, and keep on wearing your N95 till you finish your day's work, and then you can throw it. That's a sort of debatable point. I don't know whether there's an advantage to it.
As all of us have learned, and I presented in the early phase of my presentation.
Some also advise that surgical mask should be worn inside and N95 should be worn outside. What about that?
No, but that is what I'm saying. The guidelines of CDC, of WHO, of ICMR, of AIMS, and so many surgical societies, they had presented some guidelines, and in the evening, some guidelines were again changed. So our thinking is that nothing is certain till date. This virus is so smart virus. Nothing is certain. So our thinking is that yes, as you have mentioned, the debates are going on whether 2 masks, 1 mask, 2 N95, 2 surgical masks. But whatsoever we have learned in this last 1.5 years is that please have the one N95 mask, and over that you have a surgical mask, so that the chances of getting the virus, and people have shown the figures also. People have reported, the data is there, that how much chances are there if we are wearing only one mask, only surgical mask, only N95 mask, and double mask. Definitely the tendency is that we cannot give the infection to others, or we cannot take the infection from others if we are wearing 2 masks.
Comment, please.
Dr. Sudhir Rathi sir, do you want any comment? Because you are the most experienced person.
Actually, what I observed during this, some people doing mistake to wear surgical mask inside and over that N95 mask. So many of them I suggested that this is wrong way. But you should wear N95 mask, properly fitted N95 mask inside, and you can wear an additional surgical mask. As Dr. Medhavi is saying, we can discard that in every case and we can continue the mask the whole of the day.
Sure, I fully endorse that point. And the second point is, Dr. Medhavi, I would love to touch on this, is that please do not ask your assistants or technicians or ward boys or any just to remove and touch anywhere and everywhere with the mask. What I mean to say, that one has to make sure that if you are taking off of the mask also, please touch the area which is bound rather than touching these surfaces. So thinking is that this virus is teaching us the etiquettes, how to wear the mask and how to unwear the mask also. So that is very, very important, that we should not carry on touching the surfaces which has the load of virus. Ultimately, it is all the viral load which is going to hamper, which is going to do the damage. And many of us, and especially as I mentioned, this viral load ultimately goes into our adipose tissues, and from adipose tissue, because of the ACE2 receptors, it gets released into the lungs, into the heart, and causes ultimately thrombosis, then pneumonitis, then myocarditis, and that leads, and because if we are obese, then that can cause challenges. So please make sure that viral load is as minimum as possible.
One
हाँ सर बताइए आप बताइए सर.
One more issue of sanitizer.
Yes.
advisable to use so much of sanitizer nowadays when it has been shown that fomite transmission by the fomite is negligible?
Good question. I would put it this way, that initially all of us know that people were carrying these small bottles and they would just put in one drop and that's it. But nothing like hand washing. Nothing like hand washing. We are, the surgeons are in a habit of washing day in and day out and so many times, and we make it a point that we are washing our this palmar aspect also, dorsal aspect also, web spaces also. So if we are doing the washing again and again, and we are meticulous in spending approximately 30 seconds to more than 40 seconds for washing our hands, nothing like it. But in between, it is a good idea not to be miser, not to be miser with the sanitizers. Just if you have to use the sanitizer, for example, in OPD, if you are seeing the patients again and again, it is a good idea to thoroughly use the sanitizer and then clean it, clean the webs also, clean both the sides of the hand. That is always useful. But if we are miser enough that we are just touching and then doing like this, I think that is not a good exercise. So hand wash takes a preference, then good liberal wash with sanitizer. Then if the third aspect would be small drops of sanitizer, no, not at all.
Can I come in, Dr. Vishal?
Yes, sure.
So myself, Dr. Jaggi, my video is not coming. So I have a few points to make. Dr. Bhatia, you had said that CT, HRCT chest is not necessary if the patient is asymptomatic. What I want to say is, if you get an emergency, say blunt trauma of the abdomen, so we don't know the status of his COVID status. So I would suggest, since we are getting a CT abdomen done, we can get a CT chest done.
Very good.
To see whether there are any findings or not.
Very
One point on this.
Sure.
I think
Just
do you agree or not?
point. Yeah, I would say that I also endorse the same point. That if, for example, if the patient is coming for elective surgery, if the RT-PCR is negative, definitely there is no role of getting the HRCT early on if the patient is asymptomatic. But if we are having the emergency surgery, if the patient has presented with blunt injury abdomen, it is a good thought that just tell your CT person also that he should include the chest, so that, and plus if the patient is having septicemia, include the chest also, and then we can be wiser. And once we are getting the report of RT-PCR, there are situations in which RT-PCR may come out to be negative, but X-ray, the CT scan reveals that there are a lot of patches. So definitely one has to treat that patient as COVID plus rather than as COVID negative. Elective surgery, asymptomatic, yes, HRCT. There are people who were clubbing it right in the beginning, who were clubbing that get the RT-PCR done and HRCT done. No, the recommendations of American College of Surgeons also say that it is not recommended in the early phase. If the CT scan has any role, it is on day 6 to day 8.
Another point which I want to make is that whenever the OT is set up for a surgery nowadays, it should be made very, very importantly that all consumables which are going to be required during the surgery should be available in the operation theater, and the staff should not go out of the operation theater. Absolutely. I think I'm right. Absolutely. So there should be less movement outside the OT.
True.
Number two, the duration of the surgery should be minimum. We should not prolong the surgery unnecessarily. And there should be a minimum gap of 1 hour between two surgeries, so that the operation theater air is exchanged and the all the instruments and other the OT table and all, they are cleaned with hypochlorite solution.
Wonderful. I fully endorse these points. The basic thoughts are that there is safety in more safety. We should carry on doing our best, even if, for example, as you have rightly mentioned, if there is a the migration of the people who coming out of the theater, going into the theater, even if our staff is there, we can be responsible for giving the infection to our staff or to the anesthetist or to the patient also. So the migration, the movement of the staff should be limited as possible, which I mentioned, that even especially when at the time of intubation, at the time of extubation, have minimum number of people inside rather than just jumping onto the face of the patient and causing the infection. Yes. And second thing is, yes, duration of surgery, the best possible, least possible time should be spent rather than prolong it unnecessarily and causing the exposure to ourselves as well as to the staff. And you are absolutely right that in between the surgery, one has to make sure that the thorough cleaning is done. And as I mentioned to Dr. Medhavi Tomar also, that please request your air conditioning people, the HEPA filter people, that put the theater onto the negative pressure system, so that ultimately the virus, whatever virus spread was there, it is taken care of.
While going through the guidelines, I had also found one important point that they say that you switch off the air conditioning, intubate the patient, and then you switch on the air conditioning. And similarly, you close the air conditioning and then you extubate. So these are other precautions also mentioned.
I would again agree. I am not saying we should not, but only thing is that in our theaters, in our modular theaters, the HEPA filters and everything, all central air conditioning is there. So it definitely one has to take precautions, but if you have the individual kind of ACs, one can definitely switch it off.
And they have another exit sequence after finishing of the surgery. First team to exit is the surgical team from the theater. Then the extubation takes place. Then the patient is shifted. Right. After that, the anesthesia team goes out. And last is the cleaning and sterilization crew of the operation theater who will leave the operation theater. So this is the exiting sequence.
Sure.
These are the 2 points I had to make. Thank you very much.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I appreciate that.
Bhatia, one question.
Sure.
Can N95 mask reused? If yes, after how many days?
After how many
days?
I would say you would remember that initially, Dr. Singla also. So initially, the AIIMS people had given the protocol that one should have at least 5 N95 masks.
5 or 7 N95 masks.
And one should divide on the days, that on Monday you are getting one, and Tuesday this, and then you are getting the autoclave or you are getting
keep it in an envelope and keep somewhere
open it. But ultimately, all said and done, these practically what we feel is that yes, one should use the N95 mask. And as Dr. Medhavi Tomar was telling, now it is not costing that much as it was costing in the beginning. Now I tell you, the good quality N95 mask we are getting at the cost of 50 rupees, full stop. So what I mean to say, it is good idea to change it frequently and make sure that we are not keeping it anywhere and everywhere. We are not getting it exposed as much as possible. It is for our own satisfaction. It is for own viral load. We should take precautions. So we should not carry on using the N95 mask for 15 days and then think that we are wiser. No, penny wise, pound foolish. That should not be there. Dr. Singla wants to say something.
I think Dr. Singhal wants to say something.
Just,
you have to unmute.
Yeah, we have.
Yeah. Just a little comment.
Yes.
I think the present guidelines of the Royal College of Surgeons are that all major surgeries patients should be quarantined for 2 weeks prior to surgery, and all elective patients who are with moderate surgery should be quarantined for 1 week, and they should be RT-PCR 3 days prior to the surgery. Because what? Hello, am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Now these are the guidelines of the Royal College of Surgeons, because what they have seen that if for any reason the patient is in the incubation period, the mortality is 25%.
Absolutely, sir. I also agree with your point, but this guideline was given in April 2020. And,
I think there now recent papers also show the same actually.
yeah.
There are some recent papers.
Yes, the thinking, these guidelines of Royal College of Surgeons were, as I have forwarded it to Dr. Minali also. So you can share with all the group. I don't mind.
Yeah.
So that also, you are absolutely right. They wanted that if the patient is coming for some elective surgery, they should have the quarantine for 2 weeks. But ultimately, they have realized that it's not practical. They get the RT-PCR done within 48 hours or within 24 hours. CDC says that within 24 hours it has to be done, and once it is negative, then only admit the patient.
Okay. Fair enough.
Dynamic changes are coming day in and day out. But again and again, our thinking is that we should not become rigid. We should carry on learning. We should protect ourselves as much as possible. We should protect our staff as much as possible, and we should protect our patients because even if you remember that I always say one sentence: a split second becomes eternal. A split second becomes eternal. Means a small mistake can have the cascade of events, and ultimately the patients die because of the loss of window of opportunity. That they, for example, they remain home isolated, home quarantine for maybe 7-10 days. When their saturation drops down, and especially in this COVID tsunami we have seen, and then they start thinking of going to the hospital, then they are not getting the bed, and ultimately once they land in the bed, the hospital bed, they have already got the 20/25 CT score, and it becomes a cascade of events: BiPAP, ventilator, ECMO, and death. So we should not miss that window of opportunity, and we should make sure that we are trying our best to learn as much as possible in this dynamic, uncertain period.
So one comment I would like to make on these deliberations: even RT-PCR is not 100% diagnostic.
70%.
There is false negative and false positive.
True.
So we have to take every precaution in every patient. He or she may be RT-PCR negative. One thing is the clinical examination has to be proper, means symptoms have to be elucidated properly, signs have to be seen. Any fall in saturation or any congestion in test, you have to make it doubly sure that you may postpone elective surgery for a week and see whether the patient develops overt COVID or not, and then again get a RT-PCR. The patient may run away, don't bother about it. He may go to some other surgeon who's willing to do it without RT-PCR. I would not do it. I would not touch it with a tatum pole, as to say. So the issue is you have to be safe. The patient has to be safe. And I think those are the comments I wanted to make. Dr. Shanti,
I would say that I am safe if everyone is safe.
Yes.
So that has been given by WHO also, that one is safe if everyone is safe. So our thoughts are, yes, endorsing that point. Please, for God's sake, there should not be any death of clinical touch. Means we should never ever blame the patient that he or she did not give us the history. No, we did not dig out the history. Our thoughts are, yes, as you have rightly presented, we should try to dig out that whether you are having fever, whether you are having sore throat, whether you are having loss of taste, loss of smell, and so on and so forth. We are responsible rather than patient. In the end, if the patient is positive, we start saying, patient did not tell me. No, I think that is wrong. Especially for my younger colleagues, this lesson should be very clear that we are responsible for what we have, and we are responsible for what we don't have. So please do not blame the patient, blame your own self. See within.
Thank you, Dr. Bhatia. Sir has posted some guidelines from different associations, which I will be sharing in the WhatsApp group shortly. And over to Dr. Shanti Swarup for some comments, sir.
Thanks to the member of Merit chapter for attending and actively participating in the virtual meeting. With special thanks to Dr. Parveen Bhatia for such a wonderful session. In the last, a small thanks to Kanishka for arranging this Zoom meeting in a very short notice. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot. Thank you. And especially I'm very, very happy to see all of you. And as Dr. Medhavi was also mentioning, that I have been a frequent visitor, and I always feel that Meerut is just like second home to me. So I have been a frequent visitor to Meerut, and I know Dr. Rishi Bhatia, Dr. Singhal, Dr. Santi Swarup, Dr. everyone. Thanks a lot for inviting. And then ultimately, it is a question of learning, unlearning, learning, and relearning. It is a continuous phase. So we should carry on interacting so that all of us are ultimately giving the benefit to the patient, the beneficiary. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Good night.